leaders. So today we have Mr. Sanjay Agarwal, who is a finance leader, a chartered accountant, and named the company, and he's been there, Unilever, SnapDeal, and now Microsoft. So MS Office, everything, LinkedIn, he is the owner of that in India in terms of the finance processes. So welcome to the show, Mr. Sanjay.
So thanks for inviting me for this session. So my journey, if I just think about, it's been what 2 decades of learning experience. I brief myself as a lifelong student. Okay, in these 2 decades, I was fortunate enough to work in some of those marquee organizations which you just called it out, Sab Miller, Nokia. Then I worked for Unilever for about 8 years. I wanted to do something very different and be part of this entire thing which was happening on the startup side. So I joined SnapDeal, worked there for 2 years. Again, it's one of the exciting phases of my career. And then for the last 6 years, I have been working with Microsoft. What is interesting is, Anurag, if you see these 20 years of my learning, I have done a width and a breadth of finance roles. So you think about FP&A, you think about commercial finance, you think about supply chain finance, you think about treasury, you think about IR, you think about the entire thing about the strategic planning. All those things has been part of my career. So net, if I think about my journey, it's a journey which is being quite a fulfilled journey, especially from a career standpoint. I was fortunate enough to work with some of the best mentors, some of the best leaders who actually guided me in my career journey. Okay, and this is where I stand in terms of my own experience. Over to you. Back to you. Good.
So in terms of coming to the question on inflection point, because I always feel that starting as a CA fresher and coming to where you have achieved, what you've achieved in life, there must have been, if not one or two, maybe, 4 or 5 inflection points or some consistent principles at play in terms of what strategy you applied to get there, or maybe some stroke of luck, some vivid random events that have happened. So what have been those events in your life which have led to those spikes? A stock at a 10p suddenly gets re-rated at 20. So what does the stock do to do that?
So Anurag, first of all, I'm not a stock. Okay, I'm still an employee working for a company. But yes, you know, if I just think about the inflection point, actually it's very difficult to you think about one inflection point in a career which has been like a 2 decades old. Okay, but um, before I go and talk about the inflection point, maybe let me share with you. You asked me a question about what has been your principle about how you operate as a leader. Okay, I think in my life, I have always gone with a very simple philosophy that the job of any person in the company is for the customer. Okay, you need to be obsessed towards your customer, and that is something which has always worked for me in any sphere or any role which I've been doing. Okay, now coming back to your question on the inflection point, so if I think about Sab Miller, the company just came into India. They were setting up the entire, the finance function, the organization. So I was fortunate to be part of a company where I was able to set up a finance function from the core. Okay, so what is the reportings which needs to be there? How are we going to measure our business performance? What are the kind of things which we need to look into when we take a capex decisions? So everything which we created was for the first time. Okay, so for me, that entire piece of building it up from scratch and taking it to the next level was the inflection point, and that's what the business was able to see a value which what I was able to contribute. Going to Nokia, I joined the company when there was a telecom boom which was happening. Every person in the India was very keen to have a mobile handset on their hand. The interesting part was it was a large company even at that time, but we had only about a few handful of distributors who were managing the entire business for us. Okay. Now, if you wanted to go and expand and make sure that every Indian has a handset in their hand, it needed a very different thinking, which is going and creating more and more distributors across the span of India. India is a big country, it's a diverse country which is there. So I actually played a very important role along with my business partners in creating the distribution model for how we are going to go and sell in the market. Okay, So think about what we started with an X number of distributors, it suddenly became a 7X distributors over the period of 6 to 9 months. So that was a big change which happened. And if I think about what was the role which I was playing, starting from what is the kind of distributors we need to have, what's the kind of a financial thing which we're going to look into the distributors, how do you think the distributor is going to bring a value on the table, everything, there was a finance lens which was required to be seen, and basis that we were able to really help in terms of working with the business. And of course, what was the heartening thing was suddenly our market share, which was in that sub 60% plus, suddenly it increased to about some 70% plus kind of a market share. So that's a, an inflection point if I think about. Moving to Hindustan Evo, I worked in that company for 8 years, did 5 different roles. All the roles was very close to my heart. But if I had to talk about one thing which was an inflection point for me, was when I was doing a category finance, role for a brand called Pureit. So Pureit was, a consumer durable. It's a water purifier. So my job was not only a finance manager for the category. I was actually, running the entire category for the global markets. So under, the tenure which I was working in this category, we launched this brand into 10 new countries. So think about it. When you are operating in India, you know how the India market operates, okay? But when you have to go and launch this brand in Brazil, in Mexico, in Indonesia, suddenly you need to understand that market quite well. You need to understand the consumers out there. You need to understand how the retail market works, and so on and so forth. Okay. So that entire piece, which for me, this was the most, you can see the excitement in my face, in my voice, because this was the job which actually helped me in terms of getting a very wider perspective about how do you go and create business models which is both profitable and something which is scalable. Okay. Coming to now SnapDeal, I'm sure we all have gone through and seen how the e-commerce boom has happened way back in 20,000 to 2014 to now. Okay, so I joined SnapDeal when the e-commerce boom was just at the inception. So there were processes which was not set. There was lots of things which we could have done very differently from a finance standpoint. And I was fortunate enough to work with some of the BN team which I had in that company to redefine and re-engineer the entire financial processes out there. So we were doing lots of things which was very manual to the thing which we were able to automate to the thing which we were able to bring some of the data-driven business insights. Okay, so that's something which I feel very passionate about. And the last thing on Microsoft, I was there in Microsoft managing a $3 billion business, especially at the time when the COVID crisis was hitting us. Okay, so, how do you go and help your customer and partners, especially in these time of crisis? That was a leadership moment for me. Okay. So I was able to work really, backwards in terms of with our corporate leadership team, in terms of doing some of those, you know, out of the box thinking about how do you go and help the customers. So I don't know if that answers your question, but these are some of those inflection points which I feel very close to my heart when I think about my career.
And I think there's
Back to you.
one very consistent undercurrent that you've always chosen to be part of emerging businesses, very fast growing categories, whether it was a new entry into a country for a Sab Miller, or a very fast growing mobile phone category for a Nokia, or a Unilever new product launch, or a Microsoft in troubled times like COVID. So I think you've never really settled for straight jacket kind of jobs which are very mundane and just routine stereotype jobs. And I think that is something which every aspirant must understand, that you get a premium only for doing things which are complex and which are unstructured. As you said, like in Snapdeal, everything was unstructured, and
No, you're absolutely right, Anwar. Actually, I would also add one more favor to this entire thing is being about curious. Okay. In my career, one thing which has really worked for me is always coming with a mindset of not knowing everything, but want to learn everything. Okay. So how do I get new learnings which is there? And if you think about maybe in the 20 years I would have done, so on an average, I have not been in a role for more than 1.5 years. That's been my standard operating model. Okay. So if you think about 20 years, probably I would have done about some 10 to 15 different roles which is there. And now you can just think about the amount of learnings which I have got or being able to gather, okay, in each of the stints which has been there. So if somebody asks me about a career advice, the only single piece of advice which I have to, if I have to give some to someone, is always be curious, run and keep on running. That's the way thing it is.
Brilliant. I have two very quick questions. One, where do you see the future of finance leadership? So, in the advent of something like an artificial intelligence, a Chat GPT, where do you think human beings, chartered accountants and MBAs, like in the human form, are going to add value? That's my first question.
So Anurag, I think first of all, we all need to start accepting the fact that every business is going to become a digital business. Okay, there's nothing which is going to be without digital if you want to scale a business and make it something which is more profitable. And with the advent of technology, and especially on the digital side, even the finance team or the functions needs to keep on evolving. Okay. So if you ask me today, do I prepare, Excel manual reports and other things? Do we create some kind of, the whole concept of the book entries and everything has gone out. Okay. Now the job of what I have been doing with my team, okay, is to have a very clear, performance measurement index through data driven analytics. So we don't, keep on doing a reactive kind of a model, but it's more of a proactive kind of a business insights of telling the business in terms of what's the, how the business is performing, what are the risks and the opportunities which is there. So if you ask me, in not even now, but even in the future, okay, if finance has to have a say on the table, all of us needs to be really focused in terms of how do you leverage technology to drive the right kind of a business outcomes.
We run something called CEO Job Portal. You know that you've been with us since a decade now. So, in terms of finance hiring, also, I mean, hiring for a brand maybe as marquee as Microsoft might not have been a challenge, but these Gen X millennials, when you hire them, what do you think are the new pros and cons of that whole hiring process? What are the incentives that someone must put in to get things more attractive for these youngsters? Or maybe in the experience lot, when do you hire people in the lateral space? Are the trends changing? Where do you see the landscape changing in terms of the whole headhunting executive search thing happening?
So, a couple of cards, first of all, any job which you apply for, you need to have the right functional skills which is relevant for the job. Okay. But now, most importantly, as an organization and even as a hiring manager, what we also look at is what is the appetite of that individual in terms of adopting to the new technologies which is there. Okay, does that person understand something which is happening on the AI side, the RPA side, the entire piece of finance, digital transformation? Okay, do this some of these buzzwords resonates with them, and if yes, how have they been able to evolve over the last so many years in terms of adopting to these technologies? Okay, so this is something which we definitely look into it, because if you think really about what we do in Microsoft as a company, our job is to help our customers and partners to empower them. Okay, that's a mission statement of Microsoft. So until unless we as individuals are not geared up to something like that, we will not be able to get the best kind of a talent. So that's the way it is.
Thoughts, just quick 60 seconds of any final thoughts.
So I think first of all, Anurag, thanks for inviting me for this session. My only for final thoughts to the especially to people, folks who are hearing me, is that you can make your own career. Nobody would come and make a career for you. Okay, we think about something which is a luck factor. Honesty, in a career which is going to be like a 2 decades. I'm just talking about myself. There would be sometimes you may get works and other things, but at the end of the day, it's all about hard working. It's all about being very, very sharp in terms of what you want to do with your career and where do you want to see yourself. So keep on doing the right things. Make sure that you know what you're aspiring for, and always follow your heart. So that's something which has always worked for me, and that would always be my piece of advice to everyone.
Thank you so much, Sanjay ji, for coming on the show.